Welcome to an age when steel had no limits. These dozers weren't built to work, they were built to win. Thick armor, brutal torque, no mercy, they crushed rock like paper. This isn't construction, it's warfare against the earth. Number 1. Caterpillar D9G 1961 to 1974. If you want a single dozer that screams 1960s heavy iron, the Cat D9G is near the top of the list. It's widely documented as being built from 1961 to 1974, which places its early and most reputation-building years squarely in the 1960s. The D9G's legend comes from a simple truth. It was engineered as a production machine first and a comfortable machine second. Everything about it prioritized pushing, ripping, and surviving long shifts in ugly conditions. Part of the tank feel is scale. The D9G wasn't just bigger than the common job site dozers, it was serious iron, and it carried itself like it. In an era when mines and big infrastructure projects were ramping up, that mattered. You weren't buying a D9G to be delicate. You bought it because you needed traction, weight, and a drivetrain that could take repeated heavy loads without turning into a maintenance nightmare. Another big part of the D9G mystique is how straightforward the machine's working logic felt to operators and mechanics. These were not black box machines. The relationship between throttle, load, track bite, and blade behavior was direct and readable. A skilled operator could feel the machine at work when it wanted another gear, when it needed a different angle, when the material was about to boil over the blade. That's exactly the kind of mechanical honesty people associate with a tank. Modern dozers are more efficient and more ergonomic, no question. But a D9G represents a time when Caterpillar built a big dozer to do one thing exceptionally: move earth and survive while doing it. And the fact that so many are still working, restored or remembered, tells you how deep that reputation runs. Number 2. Caterpillar D8H. Introduced 1958 major 60s workhorse. The Cat D8H is one of those machines that doesn't need an introduction on older job sites. It was introduced in 1958 and ran until it was replaced by the D8K in 1974, meaning the 1960s were the heart of its working life. If the D80G was the sledgehammer, the D80H was often the all-round heavy dozer that showed up everywhere. Heavy construction, logging roads, big farm clearing, quarries, and hard-nosed grading work. Built like a tank, fits the D8H because it was engineered to be used, not pampered. In the 1960s, contractors didn't have time for fragile equipment. They needed machines that tolerated inconsistent maintenance schedules, changing operators, and long days in abrasive soil. The D8H's long production run is itself a clue. Manufacturers don't keep a model alive for that long, unless it's doing something right in the field. One detail that helps explain its toughness story is how the D8 family evolved. The D8H was introduced as a significant step in the D8 line and later saw power increases during its life, reflecting Caterpillar's push to keep the platform competitive through the 1960s. That kind of evolution, more power while keeping the same fundamental heavy-duty character, was classic Caterpillar of the era. Rather than reinvent the entire machine every few years, they refined what already survived. To understand why the D8H feels tank-like, picture the environment it was designed for. Steep cuts, stumps and roots, rock, heavy ripping, and blades loaded until tracks were clawing for grip. This is where mass, undercarriage durability, and drivetrain robustness matter more than fancy features. That's the D8H's world, and the 1960s were its stage. Number 3. Caterpillar D7E, 1961 to 1969. The Caterpillar D7E is famous across generations, but the D7E is especially 1960s because it's documented as being produced from 1961. This was the era when a mid to large dozer could be the backbone of a contractor's fleet, big enough to do serious work, yet still nimble enough to grade, build paths, shape roads, and handle a wide range of attachments. The D7E's tank reputation comes from the balance it struck. It wasn't a specialty toy. It was designed as a dependable production machine that could be worked hard in different environments without feeling overcomplicated. In the 1960s, that mattered because the same dozer might be clearing a right-of-way one month and cutting bench roads the next. The machine had to be adaptable, and it had to survive without needing a laboratory to diagnose it. The D7 model history shows the D7E arriving in 1961 and being followed by later versions like the D7F in 1969. which helps anchor the D7E as a true decade-specific workhorse. And while performance numbers vary by configuration and year, what remained consistent was the D7E's reputation for being enough dozer for an enormous range of jobs. There's also something psychological about the D7E. Operators often remember these machines as honest and predictable. You could learn them, you could sense load and traction, and because the design was rooted in mechanical systems, experienced mechanics could keep them going for decades. One more reason people use the phrase "built like a tank." The D7J&K. It wasn't built to impress in a showroom. It was built to go to work and come back tomorrow, ready to do it again. Number 4. Caterpillar D6C, introduced 1963. The Cat D6 line is one of the most important middleweight dozer families ever, and the D6C is a key 1960s chapter because it's documented as being introduced in 1963. In practical terms, this is the kind of machine that shows up everywhere, heavy enough to be serious, small enough to be versatile, and in the 1960s, versatility was a survival skill for contractors. Calling a D6C built like a tank doesn't mean it was the biggest machine on site. It means the design had the kind of durable, abuse-tolerant character that let it work across changing conditions. Mid-sized dozers often live a harder life than giant mine machines because they get assigned to everything: rough clearing, finish shaping, utility backfill, farm work, road maintenance, you name it. That kind of mixed duty exposes weak designs fast. The D6C's place in Caterpillar's evolution suggests it was built to handle that reality. A big part of the 1960s Caterpillar philosophy was incremental toughness. Platforms that were refined rather than constantly reinvented. The D6 history notes the D6B preceding it and the D6C arriving as the next step in that line. That tells you the D6C wasn't a random experiment, it was a continuation of a proven approach, updated for the decade's needs. When people talk about older dozers being tank-like, they also mean the machine's tolerance for imperfect job sites, dirt contamination, uneven ground, constant vibration, and operators who weren't always gentle. The D6C came from an era where Caterpillar expected those realities and built accordingly. That's why these machines are still remembered as dependable, heavy for their size workhorses from the 1960s. Number 5. Caterpillar D5. Reintroduced 1967. The D5 name has a complicated history at Caterpillar, but what matters for this article is that Caterpillar documents the D5 being reintroduced in 1967, making it a true 1960s dozer identity. This wasn't a giant dozer, but built like a tank isn't only about size. It's about how a machine holds up when it's constantly used, bounced around, and expected to do more than its weight class suggests. A 1960s D5 was the kind of machine that fit smaller contractors, farms, and municipal fleets, people who needed a dozer that could clear land, maintain roads, cut drainage, and do everyday pushing without being a maintenance diva. The Contractor magazine history of the D5 notes Caterpillar revived the name in 1967 and offered versions including direct drive and power shift, tying the machine directly to the era's practical engineering priorities. What makes that tank-like is the design culture behind it. A smaller dozer in the 1960s had to be tough because it was often the only tracked machine an owner had. It couldn't be specialized. It had to do a bit of everything and survive being run by different operators. That leads to conservative engineering, robust structures, simple systems, and undercarriage components built for ugly ground. Modern small dozers can be incredibly capable, but they're also shaped by modern expectations: low noise, comfort, emissions, electronics, and cost targets. The 1967-era D5 was shaped by a different expectation: work first, refinement second. That's the tank DNA people remember. Number 6. Caterpillar D4D, 1960. There to 1977. The Caterpillar D4 family produced some of the most widely used smaller dozers ever made, and the D4D is directly tied to the 1960s because it's documented as being manufactured from 1963 to 1977. That early production period is pure 1960s engineering. Durable mechanical systems, straightforward operation, and a structure designed to live on mixed job sites. A D4D could be used in places where larger dozers were impractical: tight grading work, smaller clearing jobs, farm and ranch applications, and lighter construction support. Those jobs are deceptively hard on equipment because they involve constant maneuvering, frequent direction changes, uneven ground, and a lot of small impacts that add up over years. A machine that isn't built stout will loosen up, crack, or become unreliable. The fact that the D4D ran for such a long production span suggests Caterpillar got the fundamentals right. Museum collection documentation also notes the D4D SA special application being manufactured from 1963 to 1977 and even cites large production totals, reinforcing just how widely these machines were built and used. Wide adoption matters here because it means the D4D wasn't surviving in a niche, it was surviving at scale, across many types of owners and maintenance cultures. The tank reputation for machines like the D4D comes from repeatability. They start, they push, they track straight, they respond consistently, and they keep doing those things for years. In the 1960s, that reliability was often valued more than raw horsepower. The D4D represents that era perfectly, a smaller dozer that still carried the industrial toughness first mindset. Number 7. International Harvester TD25B, 1962 to 1973. International Harvester's TD25 family is legendary among people who love old iron, and the TD25B is directly tied to the 1960s because it's documented as being produced from 1962 to 1973. If the words "built like a tank" ever matched an IH crawler, they match here. This was not a delicate machine, and it wasn't intended for light grading. It was built to push hard, work long, and take punishment in heavy clearing, logging, and construction environments. Part of the TD25B identity is how it fits into IH's crawler evolution. Tractor Data's overview anchors the production years clearly, which helps place it firmly in the decade. And period product literature, like the TD25B Crawler Dozer Information PDF, reflects the era's emphasis on practical power flow, steering systems, and heavy-duty usability. Classic 1960s make it robust and serviceable thinking. The tank feel of a big IH dozer often comes down to sheer mass and mechanical seriousness. Machines like this were engineered to run in low-speed, high-load conditions, the kind of work that tries to tear drivetrains apart. When a dozer is constantly pushing in heavy material, you're stressing final drives, track chains, rollers, idlers, and the whole structure. A tank-like design doesn't eliminate wear, but it delays failure and makes the wear predictable. Even today, people who run or restore TD25Bs tend to talk about them with a certain respect. They weren't just tools, they were heavy industrial animals. In the 1960s, that was exactly what many jobs required. Number 8. International Harvester TD25C, 1968 to 1978. If the TD25B is the early 60s bruiser, the TD25C is the late 60s evolution documented as being produced from 1968 to 1978. That means it belongs in a 1960s tanks list because its design and reputation were formed right at the end of the decade when heavy construction and land development were still booming. The TD25C is important because it shows how IH pushed its heavy crawler concept forward without abandoning the core philosophy. Build a machine meant for real work, not for impressing someone with delicate engineering. Tractor Data lists the TD25C as an industrial crawler tractor with those 1968 to 1978 years and places it in the TD25 series map, linking it directly to the TD25B. That continuity matters. A tank-like reputation doesn't come from a single model year. It comes from a line of machines that share a hard-earned identity. In practical terms, a TD25C is the kind of dozer you'd want when you're doing heavy pushing or clearing, and you need a machine that feels anchored to the ground. That anchoring is a product of weight, undercarriage design, and drivetrain durability. In the 1960s, manufacturers weren't trying to shave every possible pound. They were trying to keep machines alive in a world where downtime was expensive and parts logistics weren't as slick as today. The TD25C's tank-like character is also cultural. IH crawlers from this era are remembered as tough and sometimes stubborn machines that demanded respect but gave it back in durability. That's exactly what built like a tank means in job site language. Number 9. John Deere 450, 1965 to 1970. When people picture tank-like 1960s dozers, they often imagine giants. But the John Deere 450, documented as being produced from 1965 to 1970, shows that smaller machines could earn the same reputation through durability and usefulness. Deere's crawler line in the 1960s was about building integral machines that contractors could rely on for a wide range of work, and Deere's own anniversary-style history notes that 1965 included the introduction of integral crawlers like the JD350 and JD450. What makes the 450 feel built like a tank is how these machines were used. They weren't bought to sit pretty. A 450 might spend 1 week on grading and the next on clearing brush, then get dragged into trench backfill or road maintenance. That kind of mixed use is hard on smaller crawlers because they get pushed beyond light duty all the time. A machine that survives that abuse earns the tank label. Tractor Data anchors the 450 as a 1965 to 1970 industrial crawler tractor, which is exactly the decade window we're talking about. And the broader Deere story of the period highlights innovations and model number changes that reflect a company trying to build purpose-configured dozers and loaders for real industrial work. In other words, the 450 is a tank in the way a military Jeep is a tank, not because it's huge, but because it's built to be used hard, repaired, and used again. In the 1960s, that kind of dependable compact crawler was gold. Number 10. Allis-Chalmers HD21, 1954 to 1975 line, 60s era heavy legend. Allis-Chalmers built some famously tough crawlers, and the HD21 is one of the most respected. The tracked model list for Allis-Chalmers identifies the HD21 as running 1954-21, which means the machine was not only present in the 1960s, it was a major part of that decade's heavy equipment landscape. The HD21's reputation is deeply tied to its role as a competitor in the heavy dozer class, where durability and sustained pushing ability matter more than anything else. A great detail about the HD21's tank-like identity is how it's remembered in period comparisons. Even individual machine write-ups from reputable heavy equipment businesses discuss how an HD21 compared to equivalent Caterpillar machines in the early 1960s, reflecting that this was a serious production tractor in its day, not an oddball. And collector industry articles note early 1960s variants and configurations, which helps reinforce that the HD21 story is very much a 60s story. What makes an HD21 feel like a tank is its no-nonsense design culture. This was equipment built for contractors who wanted value and performance in a heavy class. That typically means thick structures, robust track components, and a powertrain designed to lug under load rather than chase delicate high-speed efficiency. Dozer work is brutal. You're shoving mass into resistance over and over, hour after hour. Tank-like machines are the ones that don't flinch under that routine. The HD21 remains one of the clearest examples of 1960s heavy iron that could be pushed hard, fixed, and pushed hard again. That's the essence of why people still talk about it with respect. These machines didn't push dirt. They pushed history forward. Modern dozers are smarter, but these were fearless. Real power doesn't update. It survives.